All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chris Camacho, Public Affairs Officer for the U.S. Army's 1st Recruiting Brigade and the New England Recruiting Battalion. I will be moderating today's discussion on Army National Hiring Days. We'll start with opening remarks from the panel members and then move to questions. Please be sure to place your phones on mute until we get to questions. This morning's panel includes Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Barbina, Battalion Commander for the New England Recruiting Battalion, Chief Warrant Officer 5 Troy DeGolyer, the Recruiting Command Chief Warrant Officer, the Honorable Ms. Nicole Gilmore, Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army for Boston, Sergeant First Class Tanya Almadovar, the Recruiting Station Commander of the Norwood Recruiting Station, and Staff Sergeant Joshua Mitchell, a recruiter at the Malden Recruiting Station. Additionally, on the line, we have Major Kevin Callahan, the Recruiting and Retention Battalion Commander for the Massachusetts Army National Guard. We are limited to 30 minutes today, so I request that you keep the questions on the topic of Army National Hiring Days and the Army's efforts to seek highly qualified individuals to join our team. With that said, we'll start with remarks from Colonel Barbina.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho, and I appreciate all of our distinguished panel being here today. I appreciate everybody that is listening in. Army National Hiring Day is kicking off because the Army has adapted to the recruiting environment based on COVID-19. We're trying to accelerate our ability to hire over 10,000 individuals for the United States Army over a 4-day period, the 30th of June to the 2nd of July. So in order to do that, it takes events like this. So anybody that's interested, they should go to goarmy.com/hiring days. But when you think about the Army hiring days, you ask, why am I here today? My Army story began 22 years ago, and it was really on the fields of football and basketball where I met a coach that used to be in the military, and one of my assistant coaches on my football team was a recruiter with the United States Army. They laid out to me the benefits, and I was dedicated and focused on service. And as kind of a result of my connection with them, I ended up joining the military and finding out where I am here today. As we just went through the COVID environment, I've had several of my experiences play into how I've led during this COVID-19 period. I deployed to Liberia in 2014, and I served with Operation United Assistance, where we assisted in the Ebola Task Force. I learned a lot of things there during that crisis and during that period when Ebola was striking that country, and the United States was there to assist, especially the United States Army. And I applied a lot of those things to our COVID-19 telework operations, as we had recruiters working from home to continue to do their job, connect with the community, provide leadership and support throughout the community during this necessary time. And I think the Army is key. Every experience you have, our 150 MOSs and the things that you do, they build who you are, and they help you provide better leadership during times of crisis. And that is one major thing that I've learned. We have other MOSs, like I'm an engineer, we have cyber, we have artificial intelligence, we have healthcare, and a variety of other things where people learn throughout their career how to help themselves, how to help their unit, in a lot of cases help the community. You know, the Army is all about healthcare, benefits, and other things that they can provide, including scholarships to our members of the armed services. Me personally, I came back here to New England as my wife is a Scarborough, Maine native, and we've been able to work with our family, work inside of the community, and been able to take advantage of the healthcare that's in this region for my wife and children. And that's always been a major benefit of the United States Army. You know, if you are ever interested, Army National Hiring Day is all about getting this information out. Again, goarmy.com/hiring days, the place you can find it. And as Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Barbina, Battalion Commander at New England Recruiting Battalion, I appreciate your participation to the panel. Love to hear everything you have to say.
Thank you, sir. Chief DeGolyer.
Yes, good morning. My name is Chief Warrant Officer 5 Troy DeGolyer, and I'm the Command Chief Warrant Officer of the United States Army Recruiting Command here at Fort Knox, Kentucky. I'm originally from Southwest Harbor, Maine. I attended college in Antrim, New Hampshire. I went to a small aviation college there in New Hampshire, which kind of led me to my career field in the Army. So a little bit first about what a warrant officer is in the Army. So they're technical experts within their respective fields. And for the majority of, or for roughly half of those warrant officers are Army aviators. So for me, Army aviation was my technical expert, my field. And as an Apache pilot, attack helicopter pilot, doing that job has just been phenomenal. It's been a great job. I don't for a minute, I don't for a minute just, just can't, talk about it enough. So I've been in the Army just a little over 33 years. I was recruited out of Ellsworth, Maine, and under the Warrant Officer Flight Training Program, currently referred to as WAFT, and it's just been a great program. It's a great opportunity for me. So as Lieutenant Colonel Barbinina mentioned earlier, we're at National Hiring Day. So how are we doing that? So we're taking our young recruiters out there. We've changed the way we do business. We're going to 100% virtual recruiting based, as stated earlier, on COVID-19. That kind of restricted our ability, our recruiters, to get out there, do face-to-face. So we had to change things up a bit. We had to go to virtual recruiting and shut down our stations, and that's how we've been able to recruit. And we've been very successful at that. And with that, we also use to reach out to our young American men and women. We've used social media as an avenue to do that. So through things like Facebook and Instagram, we also use job sites like Indeed and also LinkedIn, Google Jobs, just to mention a few. So we want to empower our recruiters down at the lowest level to what works best for them. So for New England Battalion, what works best in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So they're out there getting after it and trying to put the best men and women that we have into the Army today. And with that, I'll pass it back to Chris.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Gilmore.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Gilmore, and I serve the state of Massachusetts as a civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, ACASA. In this role, I serve the nation and represent the state of Massachusetts. I work to develop community partnerships that actively support our Army professionals in this state. So what that means is I actively engage as an ambassador to help folks like Lieutenant Colonel Barbinina and his team to find and attract the best talent in our area. And that talent is right here around us. Your Army is a great place to launch a career, a rewarding career, while at the same time maximizing your natural potential. And the reason that I know this is because I've been living the Army life for over 20 years, not as an active duty service member, but as a spouse, raising a family and supporting an active duty service member who currently serves as a colonel in the United States Army. We've lived all over the world, and we both have had the opportunity to grow our family while developing our skills, and for him, having a very rewarding career that includes the training, the development, and inspiring the next generation of Army leaders. I am so proud to be with you today to invite you on your personal journey inside our U.S. Army. I invite you to discover the over 150 different career options that exist in the Army. I invite you to discover all of the new and latest technological advancements that your Army offers you an opportunity to discover. We have careers in cyber, in artificial intelligence, definitely in healthcare, in aviation, which is the one that I'm connected most to, big data analysis, and many more. Your Army offers you opportunities that other companies might not be able to offer you. There are strong partnerships inside the Army with industry. So we work with commercial entities, large companies, to ensure that soldiers on the battlefield have the latest and greatest technology to fight our nation's wars, but also to protect the men and women who live and work in the United States of America. I believe that the Army is the best trained, the most equipped, and the most talented workforce in the world. And so when I'm not supporting my active duty service member, I work in a company, an organization that also supports the Department of Defense and other entities to try to solve problems for a bigger world. But even in that work, I'm actively looking for talent, for Army professionals to lock arms with, to solve problems. So I encourage you, consider one of the opportunities that's right in front of you. I encourage you to look into opportunities that are open for college students. We offer more scholarships than any other corporation in the world. I encourage you to take a look at the Army as a launch pad for a rewarding career. I'm Nicole Gilmore, CASA for the state of Massachusetts. Thank you. I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Major Callahan.
Good morning. My name is Major Kevin Callahan. I am the recruiting battalion commander for the Massachusetts Army National Guard, and I want to thank you for allowing me to speak here today. Much like you, much like Colonel Barbina, rather, my Guard story began about 22 years ago. You know, I had an inclination to serve my country. I also excelled at math and sciences, but you know, in reality, I couldn't afford to go to college on my own. So the Army was a no-brainer for me in terms of being able to pay for college and also for career opportunities. And you know, that seems like it was so long ago, but I remember very distinctly my interactions with recruiters in person. And here we are today in a COVID world, not able to interact with each other. But just like I've learned through my military career, you know, our biggest advantage in the military is being able to adapt and overcome given the circumstances that we have before us. Looking back at my career, I was able to get my engineering degree. I am an engineer, much like Colonel Barbina, and I would not change anything I've done between then and now. I have had a great career, and I've seen other people take advantage of these opportunities as well. You know, most recently, as a National Guard member, our service has been in response to the COVID-19 mission, where we've helped our citizens, with our citizen soldiers, have helped our fellow citizens, rather, who are experiencing great suffering. And that is very rewarding for me to be a part of this organization. And it's not just the National Guard. The National Guard took the lead on it, but it's also in coordination with our federal partners in the active Army, Marine Corps, etc. All of this was brought to bear to help ease the suffering that has greatly affected this state. So, you know, we are truly one team, one fight. I have very much enjoyed my career in the military. I have had a great career, and I know other people have had great careers as well. We have a lot of different opportunities for people to serve. Much like the active component, we also have cyber, we have aviation, and near and dear to my heart, engineering specialty teams as well. So I very much want to emphasize that it is important to get more information if this is something that is, if this is something that you are willing to do, to get more information and join us for National Hiring Day. So that said, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I'll turn it back to Chris.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to Sergeant First Class Almadovar.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sergeant First Class Tanya Almadovar, the station commander for the Army Recruiting Station in Norwood, Massachusetts. Thank you so much for having me here today to speak. My Army career started a little bit non-traditionally. Both of my parents served in the United States Army. So coming from Puerto Rico, they really stepped out of a traditional role culturally and decided to serve in the Army. I'm very proud of their service. When it came time for me to decide whether I wanted to go to college or join the Army, I actually decided to go to college first. I didn't do as well as I thought I would do. I wasn't mature enough, I think, to handle all of that. But I had a real heart-to-heart with my father, and through that discussion, I decided that the Army would be the best fit for me. In joining the Army, I can tell you that my life has completely changed. I was always worried that I would never be able to fill the shoes that my parents, wore. I wasn't going to be able to walk the same path as them, and I really didn't want to be just like them. But my career has been very distinct to theirs. My father served for 22 years in aviation, and he's very proud of that. But I stepped into a role as a finance specialist. I started off active duty, decided, that was the best route for me. My first duty station was in Germany. And around that time, I started a family and decided to transition into the Army Reserve. I served in the Army Reserve for a number of years. My career really blossomed. I got to see a lot of the world that I think a lot of reservists don't think they get to see, but I got to travel and do a lot of very cool things, such as being a drill sergeant in the Army Reserve. So as a female, I got to step into a leadership role pretty early on in my career and take on the reins of training and mentoring young men and women who wanted to serve this nation. Aside from that, I got to serve within my capacity as a finance specialist in Iraq and Saudi Arabia. So very cool things that I got to do in my reserve career. Around the time that I was in Saudi Arabia, I decided that I'd like to try to be active duty again. And I mean, it's been great. For the last 3 years, I've been serving as an Army recruiter and station commander, and I've been able to talk to people about how greatly the Army has impacted both my life and my family's lives. My family's very proud of me and my service, but I've been able to share that through the Army, I've become a better person. I've become a homeowner. I've been able to pursue my education and get a degree in project management. And more so than that, I've never worried about any glass ceilings that some corporations may place on people. So as a female, I got to work for a corporation that did have disparities in pay. And I noticed that, it wasn't really fair. I didn't really feel like I had equity, but in the Army, I do. I feel like I can do just as many things and have as many opportunities as my male counterparts. And I've really taken off and taken advantage of those opportunities. So in my career, I'm very thankful. I will say in the Army Reserve, the greatest asset to me has been being able to serve in my community, being home with my family, but also wearing this uniform and being able to show my community just how proud I am of my service. So in that career, I've been able to, like I said, lead. I've been able to pursue my education. I've been able to go to professional development schools that have helped me as a civilian become a better leader and a better boss. But aside from that, it's been great. In the Army Reserve, you'll find tons of careers such as medical, logistics, if you want to do finance or admin, if you want to pursue different roles within military intelligence or computer sciences, all of those opportunities exist in the Army Reserve. So I ask that you join us on these Army National Hiring Days and just do your research on the jobs that are available within your community. If you want to speak to an Army recruiter, you can come to the Norwood Army Recruiting Station and follow us on Instagram, and we'll talk to you all about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant Almadovar. And last but definitely not least, Staff Sergeant Mitchell. We still got you on mute, Sergeant Mitchell.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, good to go. Sorry about that. So I'm Staff Sergeant Joshua Mitchell. I actually have an interesting story about how I joined the Army. So I'll share that with you guys real quick, and then we'll get straight to it. I'm originally from Springfield, Massachusetts. It's considered the most dangerous place in Massachusetts. So I grew up in the inner city. It's not the nicest place to grow up. So with that being said, a lot of kids who grow up in that environment tend to drop out of school, not really see a future for themselves. And I was one of those kids. I actually dropped out of school in the 8th grade. I never did a day of high school. So it was a very interesting time from the age of 14 to 23. So at 17, when I was 17, my brother and all of my close friends, I had about 4 close friends, they decided they were going to join the military, and they asked me to join with them, and I turned that down. I just didn't see it for myself. So it was one of those situations where they've all joined, and today 2 of them are chief warrant officers in the Marines, and one of them is a sergeant first class in the Army. And if I had joined when they joined, I actually would have retired last year, distance-wise. So kind of kicked myself in the butt over that. But with that being said, I did end up joining at the age of 23. However, because I dropped out of school, and like I said, I didn't do a day of high school, I really didn't feel that I would be qualified to join the Army. So that was something, once I actually was willing to do it, I was kind of afraid to even talk about it because I was a bit ashamed that I dropped out and stuff. So my recruiter, he was a guy who trained with me. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai for a very long time. And he was training as well, and he met me through martial arts, and he just said, have you ever considered the Army? And I was like, yeah, my brother joined, but I don't think it's for me. And over time, eventually, he got me to just admit that I hadn't finished school, and that was really what I was avoiding. So he offered to have me take a practice test to see if I had the aptitude. I took it. I scored about a 79, which is a good grade on that test. And he goes, "Are you sure you didn't go to school?" So he actually paid for my GED test and paid for he took me around and did everything I needed to become qualified to join the Army, and that was pretty much that. That's how I became a soldier. So starting off, I started as a radio technician in the IT field, and I was COMO, as we call it in the Army. So I got my Security Plus certification, my Net Plus certification, all the things that you need to do to work in the IT field as a professional, even in the civilian world. I did all that training. And then when I was in Iraq as a radio technician, I realized I don't really like that job. So it was just boring. To me, it just was boring. So I learned very quickly that just because a job is a quote unquote good job does not mean that you'll enjoy it. And I had to find something that I wanted to do. So at that point, I was about 26 at that point. I was like, I'm just gonna get out of the Army. I'm good. I spent some time. I got myself situated. Let me just get out. And my goal was always to be an artist. That's what I always really wanted to do, was draw. And sure enough, the retention NCO, these are the guys that are tasked with making sure soldiers stay in the Army. He came at me and said, Private First Class Mitchell, do you want to re-enlist? And I was like, not happening. And he goes, well, you like drawing, right? And I go, where are you going with this? And he said, if I could get you as an artist in the Army, would you stay in it? And I was like, well, that's impossible. So sure, if you can give me that job, I'll stay in. And the very next day he goes, are you ready to sign? And I'm like, give me the paper. Let me look at it. So from 2010 until this last year, I've actually been an artist in the Army. So what I do is literally draw, paint, make posters, make advertisements, do marketing. That's actually my job in the Army. And a lot of people that I've met, including recruiters, do not realize that that's actually a job in the Army. So there's a lot more to the Army than simply shooting and kicking in doors and telling people to stop resisting, right? There's a lot more that goes on in the Army. That combat aspect of it is only about 15%. So there's so much more to the Army. So with all that said, what I really wanted the message that I would like to get across during this event is why everyone should join the Army if they can. So statistically, what we're told is that only about 23% of people qualify to join the Army that are in the age group of 17 to 34. So that's 23% of people from 17 to 34. So that's a very small percentage of all people, right? So With that being said, of those 23%, if you fall in that group that can join, why should you? And the bottom line is the benefits are just worth it, right? As I said earlier, at the age of 17, I turned down the Army. But the reality of it is at 17, if you were to join the Army, the plan would be kind of perfect. Let me run you through a plan really fast, and then I'll let you guys get out of here. At the age of 17, 18, if you join the Army, you do 3 years of active duty time. What that does is earn you the Army scholarship. That scholarship is called the GI Bill, all right, the 9/11 GI Bill. So you need to do 3 years full time in order to earn that scholarship, okay? So the difference between that scholarship and a scholarship you get from a school is you actually earn it. So once you've done those 3 years, it's yours. It's not a thing of you might get it, you might not. So that kind of gives you that sense of accomplishment, and you know for sure it's going to happen. So all you have to do is do those 3 years. During those 3 years while you're in the Army, you can use what we call tuition assistance to pay for a 2-year college degree. You could finish a 2-year degree in 3 years, I imagine, right? So you use your tuition assistance to get your associate's degree. Then you get out of the Army. You're now 20 years old, 21 if you joined at 18, right? So you're now 20 years old. For the next 4 years, what our scholarship does is it pays for the next 4 years of college. And it pays you to go to college for those 4 years. So if you're here in Boston, you'll get about $3,000 a month. That will be less if you're in a different area, but it's based on cost of living for that area. The goal of it is to make sure that you can focus on college and not focus on working during college. All right. So at the end of those 4 years, you're now 24 years old, correct? But if you finished your associate's degree while you were in the Army, those 4 years of college are your bachelor's degree and your master's degree. So now you're 24 years old with a master's degree and you have zero debt. That is why you should join the Army, ultimately. The benefits are just worth it. Let's say you graduate from high school and you just go to college, just straight out of high school. That's a good plan too, but at the end of the day, not even talking about how you're going to pay for it. At the end of the day, during those 3 years, 4 years that you would have been in the Army, that you were in college, you probably had a job anyways. It's probably a job you didn't really like, working at whatever small business, working part-time, whatever. So if you're going to have a job anyways that you're not really going to like, does it really matter if you enjoy your time in the Army? The benefits are worth it regardless. During those 3 years, you would have had some job, and the only thing you have to show for it most likely is just whatever money you made from the job. At least with the Army, you do those 3 years, you're guaranteed to have benefits at the end of it. So if you follow with me, at the end of your time in the Army, you're looking at being 20 years old, a veteran, and if you went to school, you already have your associate's degree done. And then at the end of that 4 years, at the next 4 years, you'll be 24 years old with a master's degree, a veteran. You have job experience on record those 3 years you were in the Army, and you're set up for life. I don't know very many 24-year-olds with their master's degree and zero debt. Do you? So that's why I would say to join the Army, and that's all I got.
Thank you, Sergeant Mitchell. We are close to time, but I do have a question I'd like for each of y'all to answer. For Ms. Gilmore, your question is a little bit different. You have the perspective of being an Army family member, and for those family members out there who don't have ties to the Army, but their young son or daughter or brother or sister are looking to join the Army, what advice would you give to a family member who is saying, the Army is great, thank you for all your service, but maybe service might not be for my family? What advice would you give to them?
I would say let your family members serve. Public service there's no greater reward than being connected to something much bigger than yourself, knowing that you're making a contribution, knowing that you have team members or people that you work with in your community who understand what you're giving, who understand your level of sacrifice, and who appreciate it on a level that's far beyond anything you can imagine. It's a lot of sacrifice that comes with service, but any public service, any service in general, requires some level of sacrifice. This sacrifice yields an enormous amount of reward. And that reward is lifelong. That reward is beyond what you can taste and feel. So let your family member serve, encourage your family member to serve, and also support them through those acts of service, even if it's the first step all the way to a rewarding career in the Army for 20 plus years. Let them serve.
Thank you, ma'am. And for the service members in uniform today, and we'll go down the same order, what has been a defining moment in your military service? A quick 45 seconds to a minute of the defining moment in your military service, please. We'll start with Colonel Barbina.
Hey, Chris, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Barbina here again. So the defining moment in my career was probably 2005 when I came back from a deployment and I trained with my best friend, William Boyd, and we were able to compete in and represent the Army as the first winners of the Best Sapper competition. So we had trained up for years. We had been best friends. We had served together in combat, and we had kind of wanted to show and participate in this like competition that is like the best. 48 teams, physically fit and motivated. Everybody had trained up. We had trained on all these different tasks, just like the Best Ranger competition. And this Sapper competition was just like Best Ranger, but a little bit more demolitions and Sapper tasks, which are engineering, combat engineering tasks. And you know, that changed my career because I was thinking about getting out at that time. I was thinking about getting out. My wife and I were about to get married. We actually had a bet going. If I won Best Sapper, I was going to stay in. If I didn't, she would stay in because she was an amazing engineer officer, and she was thinking about staying in. And I was going to go out and get in the civilian profession, and so I won Best Sapper competition with my best friend. All that training came together. We built camaraderie with all the other 48 teams. I stay in touch with all those guys and gals, and I'm in the Army today. And my wife is a huge supporter of me because of the Best Sapper competition. So that's just one seminal moment in my career, Chris.
Thank you, sir. Chief.
Chris, I think for me it was graduating flight school. So lifelong dream to become an Army aviator and an Apache pilot. And I can still remember the day like it was yesterday. But becoming an Army aviator, receiving my wings, and then going on to become an Apache pilot, it's just been really the defining moment in my career for me. Certainly, the follow-on to that is during OIF 3 or Iraqi Freedom number 3, where supporting the ground troops as an Apache pilot, and knowing that I'm making a difference with the guys on the ground that are actually fighting the battle. So both of those defining moments, kind of one relating to the other, was really defining moments for me in my career. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chief. Sergeant Almadovar.
My defining moment was definitely achieving or graduating from drill sergeant school and getting the hat like across the stage. They give you your drill sergeant hat, and it's a huge moment for you as a drill sergeant because what you've been working for. And if you're not aware, everybody kind of knows what they see on TV or in the movies about drill sergeants, but our training is just like going through basic training again, but you're held to a really high standard. There is a dropout rate. There are people who just don't feel like they're going to be able to get through it. So that was a huge moment for me. My father actually surprised me on my graduation day. It was a big deal because he was a senior non-commissioned officer in the Army, and just seeing how proud he was of me that day, like, it was a really big deal for me. And then knowing that I was going to be able to impact people's lives and to train and instruct them, it just really filled me up with a lot of happiness. And since then, my career has been on an amazing trajectory because I felt like nothing could stop me. I'd reached a point in my career where I could just go up from there, and it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. And Staff Sergeant Mitchell.
So when you asked that question, I started thinking about like all the times I went to Iraq or Afghanistan or any of the people I met. But what it really, or even my wife, she joined the reserve recently. Like those things stand out to me. But honestly, what did it for me was when I graduated college and I got my degree. So I got my degree in graphic design back in 2013. And it was something I never actually thought would happen because of the fact that I dropped out of school at such a young age. So when I had actually got my college degree, I would say that actually convinced me to stay in the Army, because the Army allowed me to do that in 2013. It was a while ago, but that was a huge, I would say that would be my defining moment, was actually achieving something that I truly believed would never happen, just due to the way my life was moving forward as a young age. So yeah.
And I did not mean to miss you, sir, but Major Callahan.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chris. My defining moment for me in my military career has to be in 2006 when I was in Iraq, and I was part of a task force that was tasked with restoring essential services to an area of Western Baghdad, and there was an area that had never had running water, and some of the medical professional teams that we had in there, also from the Army, were noticing that there were a lot of childhood diseases that were probably caused by bad water. So as an engineer, I worked with the Corps of Engineers, and we developed a potable water distribution network that served that area, again, a western suburb of Baghdad, just outside the city. And when we finally got that to work, when we finally got that up and running, and that we talked to some of the citizens there, I mean, just how grateful they were for that. And it's something that it really touched me, because it's something we take advantage of here in the States. And you turn a faucet on and potable water comes out. It's very something we very much take for granted, and to be able to provide that and to help those people, I've always seen our country as a beacon of hope. And it took a while. It took a lot of resources and a lot of brain power and money and time. But, just to be able to provide that, for me, that's what defines, not just me, but it also defines what I see the military doing. It's providing that hope where there is no hope. And for me, it was 15 years ago, 14 years ago now, but that was a defining moment in my career.
Thank you so much, sir. That does conclude our time today. I want to thank every single one of you on behalf of Colonel Barbina and the rest of our panel members for joining us today. You all have great, amazing stories from different vantage points, and it would be awesome to do personalized, in-depth pieces with each and every one of you. But thank you for your time today, and everybody have a great Army Day.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.